What's up, guys? Jim from Russell Wellbeing here, and welcome back to a brand new episode of The Unseen Battle, where we're going to dive into our guests' journey through wrestling and also their mental health struggles, battles, and triumphs. Before I get into my guest, I'm going to talk about the Hot Tag Foundation. So, the Hot Tag Foundation is a non-profit organisation based here in the UK that aims to share wrestling with children across Britain, particularly those in need. The way that the Hot Tag Foundation does this is by collecting donations of wrestling items such as toys, merchandise, and other wrestling-related goods, personalising and packaging these donations, and distributing the items to children and young people, mostly around the holidays, such as Christmas and things like that, sometimes in partnerships with hospitals or other charities to reach children undergoing treatment. In essence, the Hot Tag Foundation leverages the appeal of professional wrestling to bring joy and a sense of real-life superheroes to children. I've got a quick clip, guys. It's also got the list of the various wrestling companies up and down the UK with QR codes, links to those companies. So check this out, guys. It's about 2 minutes long, and we'll see you in a bit. Ready for So there you go, guys. Make sure you go check out the Hot Tag Foundation, along with all the fantastic UK wrestling companies up and down the UK. But before you go do that, make sure you watch this video. On to my guest today, ladies and gentlemen, introducing the current reigning, defending prize junior heavyweight champion of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Big Deal Dante. Dante, thank you for joining me, man.
What's up, good sir? How you doing?
I'm very well, mate. How are you? I know that you said that you're recovering from the cold. I really do appreciate you still coming on board, but how are you feeling?
Of course. Other than that, I'm blessed to be alive, blessed to be able to have these opportunities and talk to people like yourself, so I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely honoured to have you on the show, Dante. So, to start off, bud, can you tell us how you initially got into wrestling? Is it something you wanted to do ever since you were a child, or is it something that you came later on in life?
Of course, if you wanted to bring it way back, this probably originated from as young as I can remember. Honestly, I would say the story that right before my stepdad left, or during as he left a set of 8 DVDs. There's literally 8. Back when you had the cassette tapes and you had to put them. I remember it like it was yesterday. This blue, like thick box that I had of a TV, and I would literally put those same 8 DVDs on repeat for weeks and months and years on end, and I'd watch those same 8 DVDs that involve wrestling. ECW Living Dangerously, Chris Jericho's Raw debut, one of the Royal Rumbles, I believe, was like in '98, where Macho Man and Yokozuna. So all of those kind of stuff just got me invested in it from young as a fan there. But actually actively getting involved myself, I didn't come until much, much later on. Was obviously the last year and a half is when my career started, and that came about almost like it was like I stumbled into it, something that I didn't plan to do. But to cut a long story very short, I saw a poster that was local to the place that I live. Thought, why not? If there's ever going to be a time, then why not today? And yeah, came back from the injury. The day prior, re-injured my ankle, and was close to saying that it wasn't going to be for me, but decided I would do it anyway. And yeah, here I am now, a year and a half later, and I'm so blessed and thankful that I took that step, because that first step has led me on a journey that I didn't really see possible.
Fantastic, mate. Fantastic stuff. So, can you describe your first training experience for us? What was it like when you first stepped into a ring?
Well, it's tough because, as we said, we speak of the injuries, the ankle injury, so my movement was very limited already. It was still hurting to be able to walk when I was doing training, the rolls, the bumps, all this kind of stuff. And beyond that, the training facility that I go to doesn't have a ring, so the only time that we was able to do in-ring stuff itself was during shows. Obviously, right before the show started, there would always be some time to get in the ring. And this is why I feel like part of the reason why I'm so hungry. Honestly, it's like a fever. Whenever I'm around the ring, I can't help but want to be in the ring. It's literally, I just can't stop myself. There's no exaggeration. I always try and get in the ring, try and take a couple of bumps or run the ropes, because yeah, the first experience is something that I feel like it only gave me hunger for more. Like it's something that I wanted more of and wanted to be able to learn and just feel out. It's almost like when you're a fan and you see the ring, it's like this forbidden thing that you can't touch, right? But then when you go inside of it and take the bumps and run the ropes, there's nothing like it, honestly.
Absolutely. But so, what would you say the best advice your trainer's ever given you is?
Oh, that's a very good question. And you know what? This is not just applicable to my trainer, but something that, because I'm an avid fan of study and I study 24/7, and I always almost make this joke that I was studying wrestling before I even started doing wrestling, because again, as a fan, you watch it and you see these things, and it's almost like a planting a seed in my head, watching the obvious names like Stone Cold or The Rock or Shawn Michaels, these kind of things that I feel like planted the seed in my head, and it's now come true. Now that I wrestle, I know it to be true. Is to just be slow, essentially, just take your time, no need to rush, and the worst thing you can do is rush into something whenever it involves wrestling. You don't want to rush. You want to enjoy the moment. You want to live it in your head in real time and really think out what you're doing. So yeah, just be patient, be slow, and that leads to some of the best moments you can have in your career.
Absolutely. But so, as I mentioned, you are the current reigning Prize Junior Heavyweight Champion. Uh, you're also the Prize Wrestler of the Year for 2024. What was it like when you were told that you had won that award?
Wow, yeah. So this was something that, again, it was like, it's not comprehensible to me. It's still, whenever I hear that kind of stuff, it makes me laugh, because I'm like, me, this guy could be that. And I was told about it during it was around Christmas time, I believe. We was doing a celebratory of the year end, like essentially a prize wrestling dinner party type thing, and there was no mention that was going to be brought up. There was no mention of awards or anything like this, so it came as a surprise. The trainer Chris Royals, who I'm always grateful for being able to guide me in the right path the second I stepped through the training door. Um, I literally remember walking. Oh, sorry, excuse me. I literally remember him pulling up this like giant trophy that I've actually got right next to me. I always have it on my left of the desk. I'll show you the camera real quick here. This little star trophy. And he literally just brought it up and was like, surprise wrestler. Yeah. And then in my head, I was thinking someone else, like, this is going to be someone else. And then when he said my name, I was like, well, this is ridiculous. So it's another memory, like anything in wrestling. These are all memories that I cherish fondly.
Fantastic, mate. Well, congratulations on the award, but it's thoroughly deserved. I've seen some of your work, and it's really, really impressive with the things you've been doing, bud, honestly.
Thank you, genuinely.
No worries, my friend. So, what would you say have been some the most memorable moments or matches in your career so far?
Before we get to that, I'm just curious, because you didn't have a chance to tell me yet. Have you had any wrestling experience yourself?
Not actually in ring. I've been a fan since I was very little. I think the first wrestling show I watched, I was about 7, and I went to
Interesting.
Yeah, I watched. I think it was a SmackDown live event at Sheffield Arena, something like that. But yeah, I've always been a fan of wrestling. I've loved it since I was a kid.
Okay, so I'm curious, what would you say from the outside looking in is something you find impressive as a fan that's watching from the outside looking in?
I get captivated by a storyline that means something and also makes sense in a way.
Yes.
So my favorite storyline to date is, and it's going to be cliche, but my favorite storyline is the Bloodline story. Obviously,
Okay.
from pandemic era to the other year when Roman lost the title to Cody Rhodes, it was a very detailed, very drawn out storyline, but it was perfect in every way, sort of thing. That, if that makes sense.
That's very interesting you say that because that's a modern storyline, and you say about stories, and a lot of those stories are now lost because these days, I believe, and I'm sure we'll get into this later, but you're not able to draw those drawn out stories. You're not able to tell, excuse me, those drawn out stories because I feel like social media has a lot of people's attention span be very short and very they need it now. They want instant gratification now. The Bloodline was a rare exception, of course, but yeah, you got that back in the modern era. Again, myself watching wrestling from the 90s and 2000s, there was a lot more consistent, long drawn stories to be told, whereas these days didn't get that. So it's interesting you say that.
Absolutely, but absolutely. So, what would you say is your key thing for wrestling? What do you believe is the best thing for wrestling?
It would be exactly what you said. I agree with the sentiments. Like for me, the stories is the main reason why I got involved in it. More so, I suppose, the characters. It's almost like you're watching. I could akin it to like a movie, but you're actively able to watch all these different wrestlers, almost like characters, so to speak. And you can follow who you want to, and you can support who you want to. And you see the bad guys win. The good guys win. I'm a bad guy sometimes, so I want the bad guys to win. But yeah, you can support who you want to support, and there's all these different storylines that sometimes intersect, other times they go into their own path. That's what I love the most. One that sticks out uniquely, and I'm not a massive fan. I'm just going to be straight up with him, The Undertaker. I'm not the biggest fan of him, but a story that I always remember as a kid, looking back up, was the Ministry of Darkness. I don't know how many people would know that storyline, but that was I remember seeing that as a kid and thinking it's like really Brood, Dark Figure, and Gangrel and Edge and Christian and the Brood, these whole things. Like I remember looking at that as a kid and thinking like this is crazy type stuff. So that goes along with the story of the Ministry of Darkness, how that came to be. That was a prime example for me as to why I found into love with wrestling.
Absolutely, mate. I completely agree with that one. So, who would you say were the first wrestlers that sort of like captivated you, that made you think, the like sort of got you into wrestling?
Yeah, that would be along with that, I suppose, because the Brood obviously being Edge Christian and Gangrel, excuse me, those were already for me a significant part of my childhood, and obviously seeing what they did later on in their careers, especially Edge and Christian, who I consider two of the greatest both. You know, you got obviously your singles wrestlers and your tag team wrestlers, but I would consider those categories for both. You know, obviously more so Edge, although Christian, in my opinion, is underrated. But then as a tag team, what they accomplished as well, I think is really cool. Um, but then beyond that, the obvious one for me is Jeff Hardy, more specifically, of course, as Matt as well. I remember one of the first DVDs that I got outside of the ones that I was gifted was Backyard to Big Time. That's a very niche DVD, but it was Jeff and Matt back from like 2006, I want to say. And it would tell that story of their backyard trampoline wrestling to where they obviously came to. Um, so wrestlers like that, I suppose. Another one that would be massive for me, of course, is Chris Jericho, because that was the first guy for me that was like this brash, obnoxious, really douchey guy with this crazy hairstyle or this like ponytail that had like also waves on the side and a shiny jacket. Yeah, these kind of characters are the ones that and more so wrestlers, but I call them characters so specifically because again, it's like a film. It's, of course, the in-ring action is cool to see and everything like this, but it's almost the things they do beforehand that help draw you in. Remember Chris Jericho's debut and Raw, of course, if people know it, would be where he interfered against The Rock during a promo. And that story in itself, before they'd even locked up, before they'd even touched, invested me as a kid. This is, again, at 7 years old. This is two people that I'd never met before. And that alone gave me that spark to be like, I want to see what these guys can do. And then, of course, when the bell rings, it's a different story. But yeah, like, so those kind of characters, those wrestlers, whatever you prefer to call them, if you have something there, and this is what I draw to Big Deal Dante, my wrestling persona, if you can get the crowd on that, if you can invest them before the bell is even rung, then the rest of it is easy.
Absolutely, bud. Absolutely. So, obviously, when you were coming up with your character, I've asked this to a couple of my guests, and they always say that their character is just them turned up to 11. Would you say that that's the same for you, or do you type of sort of differentiate your character to the real person?
Yeah, I think they say that for a good reason. It's hard to disagree with that answer. Depends on what kind of mood I'm feeling on the night. Of course, if I'm trying to be a bit more generous with the crowd pleaser, then I'll behave. But if I'm being a bit of a, don't want to expose terms here too much, but a bad guy will say, then I don't like to believe that those are qualities that I show on a daily basis. I don't think I go around punching people all the time, but but you got to. I feel like you have to, because important for me is to believe in what you're doing. You have to believe in yourself and what you're portraying. Otherwise, people can tell instantly that it's phony, that it's fake, that you're just putting on an act. And for me, wrestling is about drawing that fine line. Of course, like I said, it's similar to movies, but wrestling can be so much more. It's real life. It's in their face. They need to believe it. They need to believe what they're seeing is real. And if they don't, and if they see it's too fake, then the act is the guy has gone, right, so to speak, right. So I have to believe in that. And so for me, when the character came to be, that was all I had in my forefront, is that I'm just going to be myself. There is no no faking what I'm doing before, no scripting what is going to happen before I go. I'm just going to be myself, and what happens happens. And I feel like that's why I've caught a spark with this character that this wrestler that I currently am. I feel like this is why I'm getting the reactions in the shows that I do. This is why, and I'm going to sound a bit cocky and egotistical here, but I truly believe that I'm getting some of the best reactions of the shows I perform on. Is because the people see, and they see a character and a wrestler that they believe in, and that I believe in myself, and it goes back and forth. They understand that what I'm doing in front of them is not a complete gimmick, is not completely phony. There is some truth there is some belief there, and I feel like they can come along for that ride and enjoy every second of it.
Absolutely, my friend. Absolutely. So, who would you say has been your favourite opponent to face in the ring so far?
Wow, that's a very good question. Now, I would talk from a wrestler's mindset, because I don't think this is something that many fans will comprehend, but what you realize very quickly when you're so young into the business as myself is that some of the best experiences later on that you will come to see were good experiences won't feel great in the moment, because you were so new and so eager to impress and eager to learn, that you didn't realize how great of a learning experience they would have been. So the name that comes to my mind instantly is Leon Jackson. I can't lie, and this is someone that I've had a lot of battles with, someone that I hate vehemently. If I'm being honest, he's an absolute scumbag. But what I will say is this: some of the best moments I will ever have in my short wrestling career in these first 2 years, coming up to 2 years, will involve Leon Jackson. Some of the memories that I've made, both in PWL and Prize Wrestling, which I've fought in them both. Some of the best learning experience that I've had in defeat to Leon Jackson, they've come because of him. He is someone that is younger than myself, and he carries himself like he's 40 years old, 50 years old. He has got, a level head on him. He is a tough son of a gun, and I appreciate and respect that he's given me some of my best wrestling matches so far.
Absolutely, bud. Absolutely. So, obviously, when you first knew that you were going to be winning the junior heavyweight championship, were you told beforehand, or was it like sort of like a audible called in the match? And if it was pre-planned, what went through your head when you were told that you were going to be winning the title?
Um, so the moment that I knew I was going to win the championship is when I saw it in my hands after the ref handed it me after the bell had rung. And the only audible that was called was the audible that I used with the frog splash down off the top rope onto the corpse opponent after I beat him senseless for 15 minutes straight. I could tell you the thoughts of what I felt when I won that championship, and it was pure emotion. There is no faking that. There is no script in that, so to speak. I always say this story, but my nana passed away just over a year ago now. And a promise I made to her is that if I were going to wrestle in my hometown, which is Hereford, then the first time I would have done it would have been in memory of her. That was a match that happened shortly after, 4 months after, to be exact, if I remember the date correctly. And it was me and Cyborg versus Alex Connors and Ace Volker. And then the time after that, again, my career has always been about setting goals. And so once I surpassed that one, okay, I wrestled in my hometown, what next? Gold was inevitably next, like the championship was what I had next. Did I expect that soon? Of course not, you never do. But once I had won that championship, the Prize Junior Heavyweight Championship, It was just emotion, and I thought of her again. I thought selfishly in that moment, I wish she could have seen me there live. I wish she could have been part of that experience. I wish she could have been cheering me on, and I'm sure she is from up above. Um, there's the emotions that I felt beyond that, of course, the wrestling fans who were cheering me on and giving me fuel on that night to do the things that I do best, which is feed off of them and listen to them and guide me through that match and guide me through the moves that I'm doing, guide me through the moves that I need to be able to do in order to beat the opponent in front of me.
Absolutely, mate. First of all, I want to say really sorry about your loss. Would you say that that has been what? So, what would you say have been some of the biggest challenges that you've faced in your career so far, aside from mental health?
I'm just gonna say how it is. It's adversity of any and every dynamic of any and every person, I should say, because I always have this comprehension. And this does go outside of the wrestling. This does go for a majority of my life, let alone wrestling career. Um, Looking the way that I do and speaking the way that I do, I feel like you do get whether you can. Sometimes it's more in your face. Sometimes people simply don't care and are willing to say it how it is. Other people, I almost feel like you guise it and they try and disguise it. But I feel like I do get treated differently because of the way I look, whether it be because of my skin color, whether it be because I'm shorter than an average person. These are things I have to think about, and because it was very real growing up, it was a thing growing up, unfortunately. And so, even though it's not as big of a thing in 2025, I feel like there is still to some degree that. Um, and so, it's this weird mental barrier because you have to actively continue going forward thinking this, but you can't say anything about it because sometimes you don't know, other times you do know, but you can't say because these people are in higher places or they're more respected. It's this weird mental game you have to play with yourself, and you have to. Unfortunately, I'm not proud to admit it, but in a lot of situations, I do keep quiet. I do keep to myself because I'm not the confrontational guy. I'm not the guy that's gonna raise hell, so to speak, in order to get my point across. I kind of just do my own thing as I have done most of my life because I feel ultimately that is what leads to results. I feel like if you keep on your own path and don't, let these distractions hinder you too much, even though they're there, then you will achieve what you're set out to. And so, as much as these things are, like I said, adversity is a thing I feel like that I'm dealing with actively as of right now, as of the shows I've been up to recently, and will continue to. This is something that I knew relatively going into because I've experienced so much in life in general. So it's just another step on the path I'm trying to walk across.
Absolutely, would. So, have you faced any controversy within a locker room at all because of, like you say, your skin color and because of your height, sort of thing, or is it been quite a mutual respect sort of thing with other wrestlers?
You know what? I'll be honest. The only time that controversy does happen in the back in the locker room is whenever I'm telling wrestlers actively that I'm better than them, that they are scumbags, they are lanky, that they are idiots, they are lower than me, which is all true whenever I'm at a show that I just so happen to be this supposed bad guy that people want to call me. I'm just telling facts. I'm just telling truth. However, if I were to look beyond that and be a bit more open-hearted and fair, there hasn't been any of that overtly in the locker rooms. In fact, quite the opposite. They do try and treat me with respect. It feels like a community. It feels very loving, even though I don't like that word and these people are lower than me. But I would say that is a word most people could use as loving. It feels like we're all set for one goal for the most part. Feels like we're all there for the similar reasons or same reason, which is to try and put on a great, if not the best show for the fans. Each and every time we step out there, we put our bodies on the line, as you know. People like to use the term fake. I've never liked that word because what we do in that ring is very real. The injuries that we suffer, I know this from experience. My left shoulder separated just under 6 months ago, which took me out for what should have been 3 months. A lot of people don't realize that when I separated my shoulder, which happened at Hereford from jumping off the top of a ladder and landing badly, the doctors told me that I wasn't meant to do any physical activities for over 3 months. I worked religiously, literally day in, day out. All I could do was sit in my bed and do stretches and warm up with my elbow. I felt stupid as hell. And I came back after months because of that, because I was hungry to get back in the ring and prove to the fans that this is no joke for me. So to answer your question, so I strayed off a bit there, but the locker room is a peaceful place for the most part, unless I'm one to be saying otherwise.
Fantastic. Well, so I've got a couple of quick fire questions for you, but if that's okay.
Of course.
So, what is your favorite finishing move of all time?
That's a good question. If we're talking for myself, it'll frog splash. If we're talking of all time, then it's probably got to be the Twist of Fate by Jeff Hardy.
Favorite entrance music of all time?
Wow, the one that comes to mind immediately, and I didn't think I would be saying this, but Batista. That's just the answer that came to me in my mind.
It's a good tune.
Yeah, all of that stuff. You can't beat it, mate. You cannot beat that.
What's the move you've always wanted to do but you haven't yet?
There has not been a single move that, and this is true. A lot of the moves you see Dante do in the ring, I'm doing for the first time. Like I said, I don't train. Excuse me, I do train. I didn't have a training ring, a wrestling ring to train in. So the sliced bread, for example, when I hit that in Wales, that was the first time I hit that move. There has not been a move yet that I have attempted that I have failed at.
Fantastic. Well, if you could have a match with any wrestler, past or present, who would it be?
Wow, I'm going to go old school there and say Johnny Saints. This is someone who I did not have a single clue about before wrestling. And now that I've studied religiously, like I say, and I've gone back and looked at who this guy is, more importantly, what he's accomplished, the guy seems like an absolute legend. I love wrestling in the 60s, 70s, 80s. I wish we could go back to it. Seems like it's less and less of a thing now these days. But Johnny Saints would be the guy for me.
Awesome, bud. What's your favorite cheat meal?
Oh, wow. We do love a bloody donut, don't we? I absolutely love donuts. A close second would be cheesecakes because they are both amazing, amazing, amazing delicacies.
Fantastic. What's your go-to pre-match pump-up song?
You know what, Dante actually listens to silence. I don't listen to music whatsoever. I'm completely in the zone. I feel like, again, this is to do with social media. Too many distractions these days, too many people on too many devices. So whenever Dante is preparing, all he's doing is push-ups, squats, sit-ups, whatever the case will be. No music whatsoever.
Awesome, bud. Finally, what's the one movie you could watch over and over again?
Wow. Well, I'm going to go with a classic throwback. If you know Chris Tucker or Jackie Chan, then you know the Rush Hour series, more specifically for me, Rush Hour 2. Absolute timeless. The comedy in that is very goofy, doesn't take itself too seriously. And it has just enough action to keep you invested. So that would be the one for me.
Fantastic, bud. If it's all right with you, mate, we'll jump straight into the mental health side of things.
Of course, 100%. Go ahead.
Okay, well, we'll be back in 2 seconds, guys. So, mate, if you could share with us a bit about when you first started experiencing your struggles, please.
Okay, so for me, immediately, I first have to make it clear in my mind that there is a very big difference between experiencing and being aware of. I feel like for my story specifically, I've been experiencing those mental struggles from as young as I would say 11 to 12. Um, but it wasn't that I became aware of those until years and years and years later, maybe only the past 3 or 4 years, I would say. Because looking back now and seeing it 2020 as hindsight, of course, the amount of things that I went through at such a young age, especially, that I had to kind of just tough through and get through. I was raised with my, obviously, like I said, my stepdad left when I was 7, so it's just my mum that would live with us, my brother and then my sister, and my mum would see other guys from time to time, but that was that affected me from that aspect, the stuff that she went through, whether it be personally, the alcoholism, the abuse of ex-boyfriends and this kind of stuff that I had to see on a weekly basis or sometimes daily basis. So experiencing it was that young, would say 11 to 12. Whereas then being aware of it came years later, perhaps during COVID time, is when I fully had that time to finally realize, okay, this is something that is still affecting me this later on in life.
Okay, mate. So when you first became aware that you were struggling with mental health, what were sort of like the early signs that you started noticing?
Really, just, not wanting to put much effort into anything, if I'm being honest. It's always like a weird thing to talk about because whenever I have these kind of conversations, I feel like, and thankfully, I want to say, first of all, I'm much more open and being able to talk about them now than I was even 4 or 5 years ago. And I encourage anyone who may be listening to do the same. I know it sounds very cliche, but the first and best thing you can do is usually get that weight off your chest somewhere, no matter who it is, someone that you trust, someone that you love, someone that you appreciate, think is giving you time to listen. And because that's what it took me. I'm someone who internalizes so much and is still doing that. As someone that I need to work on for both good and bad. Because I have a habit to not want to talk about situations until they are fully gone through, until they have happened and they're fully out of the way. And when it comes to my family situation, and this is something that I know people who don't know the situation fully are open to judge, and that's completely fine with me. But I don't get along with my mum. I don't speak to her anymore. I don't speak to any of my family members. The only one that I still love is my brother. And that's just how the path went with my family life, right? It's something that I can live with because I'm always going to be grateful that she was able to raise me and have a roof over my head and feed me and give me clothes. But she also has caused me some of, my most painful periods, unfortunately. She is someone who has abused me, someone who has done a lot of things to hurt me, mentally and sometimes physically. And so you carry that stuff, right? You carry that along with you. It doesn't just go away. Um, it's more so for me important to deal with it now and deal with it when I was dealing with it, so that it doesn't affect future relationships going forward. It's not something that I want to carry on to other people. I always say that you can go through a lot. It's almost like the saying, right? You can trip and you can fall over, but it's how you pick yourself back up that defines where you are as a person. And I feel like that's what I do. I feel like a lot of my childhood was tripping and falling over, whether that be because of myself or other people. But it's how that I've carried myself, picked myself back up, and kept moving forward. That is really the way that I try and look at things. So I try and do that going forward to now when it comes to noticing and experiencing things that happen as of this week or happens as of 10 years ago. I try and do the same. I try not to let it dictate me what's happened, but instead how I can react to it going forward.
Absolutely, mate. So, because you've become aware of um, obviously suffering with mental health, have you managed to get a hold of, not necessarily get a hold of, but have you come to realize what your triggers are if you are having it and what to do to get yourself out of that situation if you are experiencing a trigger?
Yeah, so again, like I said just then, a big one for me is family specifically, because it was almost like a foreign concept. I'm just going to throw some odd ones out there that some people might be able to relate to, maybe not. But um, an example of what I would go through in life from the ages of literally 11 till about 18 was I would never ever go downstairs unless absolutely necessary. It was 2 floors, so we had the living room downstairs, and then my room was upstairs. I would never go downstairs because I just did not want to interact with my mum whatsoever. Because I was scared of if something would happen, or if I was scared of, there was a chance of arguments or anything like that. She would literally bring the food half up the stairs, and I would grab it from the other half of the stairs and just take it back upstairs to my room. I would just stay in my room 24/7. So the point of that is that the concept of what a family actually functioned like was very, it's foreign to me. It's like I didn't quite understand. Oh, people actually sit at the same table and talk about their daily lives, or people love their family as everything, or sons and roses and this kind of stuff. It was foreign to me. Um, and so I don't know if it's necessarily a trigger as in my mental changes the second I hear it. It's more so every time I hear any conversation that involves any sort of family, whether it be sister, brother, mother, anything like this. I always think, unfortunately, like it then brings me back to my family, like how mine wasn't able to be like that. And it's something that I don't like. I don't like experiencing negative emotions. And I'll be open to say, like, sometimes I'm jealous. Sometimes, like, wow, I wish I could have had a family like that. I wish I could have had that support system. Wish I could have had people who had supported me. What would that have been like? So anything along those lines um, is what gets me, and that's something that I'm trying to improve on till this day. Because again, I understand those are nasty traits. Those aren't traits that I'm proud of saying. That's just how I am as a person. I believe no person is perfect. And I always use it as a motivator. More importantly, so something that I realize is that turn the negatives into positives. So whilst I try and become a better person with dealing with that, I also say that if I'm lucky enough to have a family one day, whether it be sons, daughters, wives, etc., no matter the case, When I say wife, I mean one, by the way. I only want one wife. I don't need more than one. But I want to be able to then make that loving family my own. I then want to make them feel like the most loved wife of all time, like the most loved son of all time or daughter of all time. I want it to fuel me so that I can become a better person, not only for myself, but more importantly for them. Um, so yeah, to bring it back to your point, family is a big, big thing in my life, both good and bad currently.
Absolutely fantastic, mate. So, would you say that your past experience does it make it difficult for you to have relationships with people, whether that be friendships, whether that be intimate relationships? Does that have any negative effects on you at all, or do you just try and make the best of things?
Um, the stubborn part of me would love to say no, but again, we're being open and honest, and more specifically, excuse me, in the last relationship I was in, which of course I'm not going to go too deep into, just out of respect of her more than anything. But that was something that was a very common theme that she would often bring up in the relationship, is that obviously through telling her my story and what I've been through, she believed that that was something that almost became a barrier for us. People may or may not have saw a video that I uploaded to my Instagram, a big deal Dante, that was a what fans like to call a promo, but for me it wasn't really a promo. It was just me kind of speaking my mind in the moment in that situation. And one of the lines that I say in that is that my ex had broken up with me shortly during wrestling, I should say, and that I no longer, the person that I loved with my life is no longer with me. That is all true, and that is a big part of the reason as to why. It's because I'm always going to own up to my mistakes, and unfortunately, that was one that I realized and only could realize because of the relationship, is that I still had stuff to do with myself from my childhood, from the trauma experiences that I've been through growing up. Um, it's it's never something overt. It's never something obvious that you can think, oh, okay, that's why that happened. It's something that you kind of only look back and realize, okay, maybe that is why. And then you start to see patterns. You realize, okay, maybe I don't trust this person because of what I went through. And you look for these reasons. You try and look for ways out, but the deeper you look into it, you realize, okay, this is something that is just a me problem, and you have to take accountability, and then beyond taking accountability, you have to realize what can I do in order to change that. Like I just said, one for me is trust. I have a very hard time trusting people in general because of what I went through with my mum, with my family members. It wasn't just my mum. When I say that she's a focal point of it, of course, but it extended to the whole family, really. Like even her and her sister would fall out, and her and the uncle, and abuse all over. Like the whole family tree is a bit of a mess. This is why I speak to none of them. This is why I'm like my own entity, really. I'm cut off from my family for the most part. And to delve into that quickly, like I said, my brother is my world. He's someone that I love and will always love. But the reason why I don't speak to him specifically is for the same reason as I simply don't want contact with my mum. I simply, it's something that I don't want to delve into. I don't want to bring back up all those emotions, all the feelings and memories. It's almost like I do want to go forward at that stage in my life because it caused me so much pain and so much of these experiences growing up. And again, some people might think of that as a foreign concept, that couldn't possibly be the case. Other people might be able to relate completely. Um, it's like such a weird bridge you have to cross, right? It's like I always question myself on a weekly basis. Like, do I really love him that much? If I did, I'd be willing to make the effort regardless. But then the part of me is like that experience and that pain, whatever word you want to use, the sadness, the depression, all these things. Why am I going to try and revisit that when I could just move on? And as selfish as it is, it's almost like I have to lift myself in order to, I can't put myself back through that just so I can speak to him again. So these are all weird things that you have to, I believe. Again, every experience for every person is going to be different, of course, but these are the things that I think about. There's no right or wrong answer, in my opinion. That there's, sometimes I think if I did mess him tomorrow, then I'd be the braver, bigger person for it. But the other part of me is like, unless you're in my shoes, then you really don't understand, the trial and tribulation. It's not as easy as saying, okay, I messaged him, right? It's never that easy. It's never as easy as people like to see. So yeah, those are things that I think about on a daily basis, really.
Absolutely. I do understand what you're going through, bud. As my wife has very similar relationship with her mum. She doesn't speak to her mum whatsoever. She doesn't really speak to her family and this that, and because her mum was quite abusive to her when she was younger. So I do completely understand where you're coming from with that one, mate. And I am sorry that you've gone through all that.
Well, this is completely fine. If you don't mind me asking, of course, you don't have to answer, but I'm curious, what is your family situation like? Do you keep in touch with your relatives, or what is that like?
I've got quite a good relationship with my family. I see my brother, my parents on a weekly basis. I've got a little niece who's just turned 2, and I love her to bits. She's everything to me and what have you. So I consider myself very, very lucky to be to have this sort of family.
That's awesome there, brother. Genuinely happy for you. Because again, it's only through hearing these other experiences that I feel like people can appreciate just a little bit more, just a tiny bit more. Those kind of things that we do sometimes take for granted.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. So, would you say that there's any specific challenges related to mental health that you face in wrestling? I'll give you a couple of examples, mate, if you want to go through them. Performance anxiety, pressure, travel, body imagery, and social media scrutiny. Have you experienced any of those whilst wrestling?
You know what? If I'm being completely transparent, it's actually almost a 180 for me. Wrestling has almost been an escape in every which way, in every which way. Because through my personal life, I realized I almost, again, was shelling myself off, not only to people, but almost myself in some sort of weird way. I wasn't able to truly be myself in some aspects. I don't know, there just felt like there was always pieces of the puzzle missing for whatever experience or situation would incur. And so when it came to wrestling, it was almost as if that allowed me to be free. And because of what I dealt with, through my childhood, through the racism and everything else that came with, whether it be family or more importantly school and this kind of stuff. When it comes to racism, of course, it was not something that I experienced with my family, fortunately, but in school, and again, we're talking at this point would be 2006, 2007, etc. These are times where it was still somewhat there, where it was still, again, like I said, not in your face, but there was always some form of it, it felt like. So I always say, if people know me as a person, I always try and take silver linings out of situations. And again, I know not everyone looks at it this way, but at least I do, and it's helped me that even with those negative experiences, obviously clearly negative experience, you can always take some positive from it. And for me, it simply hardened my skin. It simply meant that the age I'm at now, 25, being that I've been through and experienced so much that negativity and that anger, that when it comes to the wrestling side of it, of course, I've only been doing it a year and a half. Anything that has been said, and there have been things here and there. If people know of carnival shows, which are obviously fun fair shows where you put up a ring and this kind of stuff, I've noticed it happens more so there in certain parts of England. And I'm not going to name any cities or anything just out of respect to those cities, because I don't want to generalize, a whole group of people just because some idiot in a crowd said some things. But I will say, there's this wrestler that I wrestled one time called Basher. I hope you won't mind me sharing his name, but remember me, he's a similar skin color to me, and we was having a match. And I remember we was doing a certain, not to pull the covers back too much, of the curtains back too much, excuse me. But I remember him whispering to me as we was going through the match. He said, "Some guy just called me a packy." He said, "Excuse me if I'm not allowed to say that word, but said the P word essentially." And he called us both that. And then a couple of times throughout the career, short career, it has always been carnival shows, rarely where I've had people say racist remarks, whether it be just the color of my skin, or whether it be monkey, or whether it be I look like X other insert black person here. Other than that, and if I were to look in my mind what I was thinking in that moment, it is all of just a second. It is a bit of bewilderment. No longer is it anger, which it would have been when I was 8, 7 years younger, or 7, 8 years if I can count properly. It's no longer anger or like frustration towards that person. It's more so just weirdly almost curiosity and bewilderment as to like, why would that person say that? A quote that I really has stuck with me, and I only heard it recently. If anyone in the wrestling community knows someone called Austin Aries, I know he's a controversial person in his own right, but something that he said, which I couldn't agree further, is that why would you want to feed into things that you don't want to see grow? You want to feed into the things that you want to see grow. So you take a plant, you don't want to water anything else, you just want to water that plant and see it grow. And I believe you can take that a step further and say, If you truly love wrestling and you want to support wrestling, then why would you want to affect it in a negative way? I believe that you want to support it in a positive way and you'd want to see it grow. So only show love to the things that you love. And if you don't like something, which everyone is entitled to, for example, a controversial thing I say off the top of my head, I don't like the modern day flippy dippy. Everyone does six Canadian destroyers and then kicks out of it immediately. I'm not a fan of that wrestling. When you hear me say about it and slight the performance for doing it, maybe every now and then, sometimes at a show maybe, but jokes aside, like you will never hear me talk bad about that online and bash the people who do it because I'm going to only see the things that I love. I love the storytelling aspect of wrestling. I love when there's an investment there, and so I'll feed that. Sorry, I keep going off the path here, but yeah, to bring it back, those things, carnival shows that they seem to have people there that seem to want to feed into that negativity. In general, other than that, social media, I'm sure there is stuff negative about it there that I've yet to experience and will probably experience at some point. But Dante does not let it affect him. I keep going forward. I keep doing what I set out to. My goals. My current goal is to wrestle in front of 1,000 people. And whether you hate me or love me, I can guarantee you, in 10 years' time, when you are able to look back at this clip and see what I've accomplished, that will have happened. I guarantee it because I do not let the negativity affect me. I keep going forward. I'm going to keep doing, and I'm only going to feed the things. And I urge people to do the same. If you say that you truly love wrestling and you're a fan of it, then only feed the things that you love. And wrestling, something that a lot of people love, so just feed that.
That's something, mate. I've got to say, mate, that's a fantastic mentality to have, and I think you should be really proud of yourself. And I've got to say, mate, I'm really proud of you for having that sort of mentality.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And again, it's not something that I'm not gonna claim that I've been like this my whole life. As I'm sure you'd be the same if the question was asked to you, right? I'm sure we've all had things. And what I realise is not even stuff that you sometimes say overtly, right? Or you said it in that sometimes it's stuff that you thought in the past, and I don't know if you're the same, but like there are thoughts I sometimes have that I have to catch myself with. I'm like, why am I like maybe it could be something as small as like I feel like someone's lying to me. So then I'm going to take it personally and start calling them names in my head. I'm like, oh, why are you lying to me, idiot? This kind of stuff. Like, I really don't want to think like that because at the end of the day, like it's almost like these seeds that get planted into your mind and then make the negative energy more, even if you don't necessarily say something about it. And I'm sure, like I said, you'd be the same. I mean, there's thoughts that you had in the past and you don't like, and you like in your head, you're going blah blah blah, this one. Realistically, you know, you're not going to go for the next 24 hours of your life saying that same thing over again and hating that one person. You've got a life to live. You've got, like you said, the needs to be able to love and your wants to care for and these other people that you love. So it's a process, and I feel like one of the ugly things about life is that you're never going to be the perfect person. Like I said, right, you're never going to be the complete person that you want to be, even when you're 60, 70, 80, perhaps. But I feel like the beautiful thing about life on the converse side and the opposite side is that you can become a bit of a better person each and every day. And so that goes along with that. Like I said, if you're feeding those positives as opposed to the negatives, then you are becoming a better person each and every day, I believe.
Absolutely, mate. So you mentioned that you've had problems with crowds obviously being quite racist towards you. When these things do happen, do you tell the promoter and do they sort it out pretty quickly? Is that a sort of thing that happens?
With me personally, I'm just going to keep it honest, of course, again, and say if I'm being honest, and people might judge me, they might not. But no, with me, I don't bring up these issues, and there's one specific reason as to why. It's because I believe everyone has bad days. And I'm not saying that excuses racism or excuses abuse of any kind whatsoever. What I do say is that this is an emotionally charged thing. What is wrestling? It's something that you inherently need emotion to be able to fully believe into. And there's this very weird line when it comes to wrestling that a lot of people often cross. But does that make them a completely bad person every single sense of the way? I don't believe so, and people can again agree or not. I believe, of course, if you were to look for myself, and again, I'll be honest, am I going to say that I've never said a bad thing in my life ever? No. There have been moments in my life where I've been emotionally, whether it be, again, if someone's been racist to me or if I've been emotionally charged from a fight, I've said something that I regret after. I'd like to hope that doesn't define me as a bad person for the rest of my life. So I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. I like to believe, for whatever reason, And again, this is why I said I'm curious, because I would love to know the reasons as to why these people like to behave that way. But I'm not going to say that they're an inherently inexcusable bad person because they said one remark to me. I'd like to look at the bigger picture. I'd like to believe that there is good inside of them, and you just need to treat them um, like that. Like, yeah, it's very much like I don't look at like the specific incident and then look at them like that. I try and look at the bigger picture. And so I'm not going to bring up those issues to a promoter or immediately after the match, simply because I feel like there's always more to that story. I always feel like there's a root reason, whatever their story is, whether again it be because of family issues, maybe they were abused themselves when they were younger and they feel like they have to take out on other people. Maybe it's because they simply do have hate in their heart for whatever reason. Again, there's so many different reasons it could be. But excuse me, I do feel like if you start that conversation, if you feed that curious, that positivity again, if you feed that positive side, as opposed to just citing the negative, being like, this guy said this to get him out of here. I'd much rather like to try and find a positive way to try and help that person, as opposed to feeding into that negative and being like, this guy's banned now, this guy's never see him again, like this guy's an idiot. I'd much rather try and feed the positive side of it.
Fantastic, mate. I think that's really, really big of you, mate. I think you should be real proud of that. It's honestly fantastic that you do have that mentality, mate.
Thank you, brother.
So, obviously, if you're ever experiencing any overwhelming points of your mental health struggles, what sort of coping mechanisms or strategies do you find most effective when managing mental health?
It's a bit of an odd one, but for me, the biggest one is music. For whatever reason, it doesn't have to be any specific kind of music. I always joke about, oh, if I'm angry, then I want this hardcore death metal rock, and if I'm happy, then I want this, Ipsy Dipsy La La Po, the Teletubbies type thing. But jokes aside from that, like yeah, any kind of music, I almost feel like you can lose yourself in it. It's something that always gets me motivated whenever I go. Before the wrestling, of course, you have your entrance music plays, and even then, in those moments, obviously, I'm not always sad right before I go out to a show or have a match. But any kind of music and anything, it's always had my mind at ease. It's always put my mind at peace. And so music is where I lose myself.
Definitely. But so, would you say that you have any sort of support system to rely on in wrestling if you are having a bad day at all? Is there anyone that you know that you can go and talk to at all?
Yeah, I'm sure there are people I could go and talk to about situations if I were to really need to. Although, and this is again just personal to me, say this, I want to clarify that I'm not trying to grab any sympathy because I've already become at peace with myself. Again, it's taken, I always say this, like 25 years it's taken until this current day to finally be at peace with my situation, because I always believe like that it's fine to understand, and of course you want to understand what you've been through and deal with it, and begin to deal with what's going on and how you can improve. I don't want to say the wrong word is improve, but more so try and cope, or whatever word you want to use, as to these emotions that you feel. But the similar side, I don't want to be that person who's always going like, I'm going through this, so I'm going to be sad and not do anything today. I'm going through this, so I'm going to have the, like, I always try and find the right balance. So in that, I simply, there's not many people I speak to at all, if I'm being completely honest, like outside of wrestling, in wrestling and work. Again, I don't speak to my family, so there's no one there to talk to. I have a very few set of friends that I would consider friends within wrestling, but again, I know there's almost like Tai Chi wrestling. That's what we speak to about 90% of the time. So I'm not saying those aren't legitimate relationships. What I'm saying is that if wrestling were to stop and I were to stop wrestling, I feel like those relationships would probably fall apart. And I'm not saying they're a bad person. I'm a bad person for that. That's how life works, right? Similar to if people have lived through high school and primary school, you notice 95% of the time, at least in my experience, the people that you were friends with in high school and close friends with, the second you leave high school, you no longer speak to like 99% of them. That's just how life works, right? So again, I've been at peace for maybe the last, I would say, 2 years now, that there is no one that I really speak to about these deep issues. Again, the reason why my ex-relationship was so special to me was for that reason. I was finally beginning to have someone that selfishly I could perhaps share that burden with. And she knew a lot of issues that I'd never told anyone. and I'll always be grateful of her for that. But outside of that relationship, there is no one that I really speak to about anything deep, and I always wrestle with, pun intended, the reason why. I always wonder if because I don't want to give them the burden, or I wonder if because I'm still not fully at peace with the situations I went through. I always wonder these things, but ultimately, what I do know is that I'm able to carry this weight right now, and I'm able to carry it to a point where it's not affecting too many relationships going forward. I'm able to carry it where it's not having as many negative effects as it did, say, 5, 10 years ago. And I'm able to keep moving forward and hopefully, keep being more at peace, if that's a term, more accepted of what I've been through, and hopefully become a better person going forward.
Absolutely, mate. So, what message would you give to other wrestlers or anyone that's watching that might have been in the same situation that you've been in, and they are struggling with their mental health and they feel as though they can't talk to anyone?
Yeah, again, so it's I almost feel like a hypocrite, right? Because I did say at the beginning, I feel like that again, you have to speak to someone and you have to talk to X, Y, Z people you appreciate, and I feel like that does help. I still stand by that, but I will also say something that I believe is more important is that and there's no real way that you can just click your fingers and this happens, but you have to love yourself in whatever way that may be. You have to be looking in the mirror, the person that you see before you, and try and be proud of that person. It doesn't have to happen every single day. It doesn't even have to happen every single week. But if you can see that once a month, once a year, as much as you need to be able to, um, be proud of the person that you see before you. Love that person, because that in these moments, what I've experienced as to why I can be lonely and be okay with it somewhat is because I am happy with the person that I'm becoming. I am proud of the person I'm becoming. 5, 6 years ago, I wasn't necessarily. I didn't like the person I was. I didn't love the person I was, and I wasn't proud of the person I was. But I am now, and a big part of the reason why is because I've been able to make those small changes over the years, and I love the way that and it's going to sound arrogant, but I hope people would like to agree that the people that I now interact with in my life, I'm able to make them laugh. I'm able to make their lives more positive. I'm able to, the fans, when I'm not being the idiot bad guy, I'm able to make them, their life better, and give them moments to share about. And that makes me proud. That's all I need to keep going forward. If I can go to any venue, it doesn't matter if there's 10 people, 100 people, if I can make one single person's night, whether it be I give them a memory that they hate because I call them bold because I'm a bad guy, or whether it's a kid that I had a championship up with and they had a picture of me. If I can make one person's night, then I've done my job. And to bring a circle, that is the reason as to why I love myself, because I'm making these memories not only for myself but for them.
Absolutely, mate. So, how do you believe that the professional wrestling industry can better support its performance mental well-being?
I will give my opinion. It is not going to be an answer because I don't feel like I'm qualified to give an answer, because I've only been in the wrestling space for a short amount of time. Again, I've only been in there for a year and a half, and so the stories I've heard prior to when I got involved, either 3 or 4 years ago, during COVID time, and what I've heard of even pre that, again, talking 2015, 16, 17. So I can't speak on those times. I can only speak on the experience that I've had. What I will say is that just talk, just be open to other people's experiences. Just don't cut off other people's experiences, and don't take it, don't shut them off, and seriously, if they are being serious, and listen, and don't judge straight away. Like I myself in the past have, and not talking wrestling again, more so life, but I was guilty of, if I heard a story, sometimes it's warranted again from my family experience, I would often be lied to, but other times it wouldn't be warranted, and I would judge people immediately when I hadn't heard the full story. So I just say give people the benefit of the doubt, and this is their full story.
Absolutely, bud. So, as we're starting to wind down, mate, what role has wrestling played in your overall mental health journey? Do you think it's been a source of strength, a challenge, or a bit of both?
Like I said, it's so far in wrestling, I'm extremely grateful to say that it's been a complete 180 to my personal life, where I've experienced almost nothing but ups. I'm waiting for the down. Every single goal that I make in my wrestling career, I keep hitting it. Wanted to make my debut in my hometown, did that. Wanted to become a champion, did that. Wanted to wrestle in front of 500 people, did that. Going up to 1,000 now. So I'm trying to make sure that I continue doing that. And again, I'm never trying to be selfish now. If I want to do that, then I want to do that with other people. I want other people to experience the same memories. And this is why I love training. This is why I love helping new people that come in to then, that for me, I always say this now currently, my wrestling career is still going up, but the experiences that I'm having that I feel the most grateful for right now are seeing other people that I didn't know even a year ago, and they're now making their debuts, and they're now wrestling for their first title matches and this kind of stuff. These are all positives that I'm loving seeing them achieve as well. So yeah, I think again, just build up the community, not just yourself.
Absolutely, mate. So you mentioned it briefly, but second to last question is: what are your aspirations and goals within professional wrestling for the future?
I apologize. I'm just going to have to relocate temporarily. So my phone's about to die. I don't want to just abruptly leave you. So I'll relocate here for this last part. But what I would say on that is it would be to do with crowd again. It would be some form of crowd. It would be not necessarily number. If I was talking number, obviously I said 1,000, but outside of that, I wouldn't necessarily that's a be all end all. I want to make an experience, a memory, something that I know is irreplaceable, something that I know is not going to happen again in my career, and know that in the moment. This is not to sound like I'm not grateful, because I am, but with my first championship, I also know there's going to be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more championships to come. I don't believe I'm done. I believe that I'm going to have multiple more champions in my career before I'm done. So I want to make a memory that in achieving it, I know there is nothing like this. I don't know what that entails and what that might be, whether it be wrestle someone who I could only fathom of wrestling with, I should say, whether that be that I wrestle at a venue or a place that I wasn't able to fathom. If I could hit one of those memories and achieve that, and know about it as soon as I walk back through the curtains, then life in term, and I use life interchangeably wrestling, because wrestling has become my life. Wrestling is what I live for currently. For the reasons I stated earlier, just to hit on it quickly, one of the issues I had growing up, again, 22, 23 even, I had no idea what my goals were, what I wanted to achieve, and had no idea what path I was going on with life. And wrestling enabled me to, it gave me a clear path. Oh, this is something that I want to do for the next 15, 20 years. So, again, I believe life is about making memories, and now wrestling has become about making memories. So, yeah, just more of that, and one specifically that I want to hit. Whether that be, I don't know, but if I can do that, I'll be the happiest man alive.
Fantastic, bud. Final question for you, bud. And I said to this before we came on stream. I asked this to Steve Dean. I've asked every single one of them, I guess, from Steve Dean up to you. Steve gave it the best reaction, and then I had Mustafa Khan on yesterday. He gave a great reaction. Who is on your Mount Rushmore of wrestlers?
Wow, that's a great question. I'd probably have to go. Almost James Ellsworth, Spike Dudley, and Lil Jimmy. I'm joking, of course. No disrespect to James Ellsworth and Amos and all this, but jokes aside, again, it is very personal and it is opinionated, of course, but for sure there'd have to be Chris Jericho, because again, he's someone through in my life, my experiences. He was literally there from the second that I got invested in wrestling. He was one of the first ever figures that I saw in wrestling, and he's still doing it now. So that in itself, to me, says something. I would put collectively, because I don't believe they get enough respect, I would put Jeff and Matt Hardy. I don't mean them specifically respect. I'm also mean tag teams in general. Don't believe that tag teams get enough respect on Mount Rushmore, so I'll put them there currently. And then I would also go with Edge, because again, similar to Chris Jericho, I wasn't introduced to Edge as much, because his career wasn't as consistent as Jericho. Obviously, he had the neck injury and then came back, but I did know of him from the Brood. And of course, back then he was his tag team wrestling that became a singles. But this is why I put him there, because what he's done, I would say, from 2020 to 2025 was incredible. I forget what day he came back to wrestling, of course, what year it was exactly, but that whole thing that he's managed to come back from neck injury and accomplish what he has done. For me, emotionally, he's made me feel something. And again, I stress it, that's what is most important to me in wrestling. It's not about the moves you hit, it's not about the amount of flips you do. It's about what someone or something makes you feel. And if you can achieve that, then the rest of it is a walk in the park.
Fantastic, mate. So, guys, that is it for today's episode of the Unseen Battles. I hope you've enjoyed it. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say a massive thank you to Dante for joining me. Thank you so much, Dante.
And sorry for interrupting you. I just want to say quickly before we call it a night here today as well. I want to say a massive thank you to you, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Stepping out of character for a second now, the Dante character. I believe this is so important to talk about in wrestling, and I know it from life. Again, I've only been in wrestling for a hot minute. But what I know in life, as in wrestling, is that these things need to be brought attention to more. These things need to be spoken about more because they affect. And I know this for myself. I know, and again, it's something that I'm trying to work on. I'm guilty of that. I don't speak about it to people personally, almost non-existently, because I try and keep it to myself. And so from the outside looking in, people would look at me and think I probably lead a normal life and don't have these tribulations and trials and trauma, whatever you want to call it, that I go through. But the truth of the matter is, like, I'm a damaged boy. You know, I've been through a lot of stuff, but I'm proud of saying that because I'm here today. And more importantly, I know so many other people out there have probably been through much worse. I'm grateful to grown up. I was able to at least have a roof over my head, and at least have water, and at least go to a school, and at least have clothes on my body. I know some people don't even get that. So yeah, just continue doing you, man. You're doing a phenomenal job, and I think you should be proud of yourself for bringing attention to this, and you've had the mind to do it. Like, not everyone is able to, you know, just even think of that idea to be able to bring it towards wrestling. So be proud of yourself, brother. Yeah.
Thank you, mate. I really do appreciate the kind words, bud. I'll let you finish off, Dante. If there's anything else you want to say, mate, anything you want to plug, obviously, I forgot to mention the QR code just above my head, guys. If you want to scan that, that is actually a link to Dante's Instagram page at Big Deal Dante. So make sure you go check Dante out, give him a nice follow, like some of his posts and what have you. But yeah, Dante, if there's anything you want to say, mate, anything you want to get off your chest, feel free, brother, and then we'll end.
There is only one thing. Actually, two. I can't count today, but the reason is very simple because I had a very fierce battle last weekend at PWL Wrestling. My mind was rattled and I took the loss. But Dante is coming back to PWL one day to avenge his loss. And that comes in the form of Leon Jackson, you absolute scumbag. If you're watching, then I want you at PWL and I will get you one day. And whether that's tomorrow or a year from now, I do not care. I want your head, you lanky idiot. And then also, another thing. Next weekend, actually this weekend, I lie, Sunday, the 8th or 9th, Dante can't count again because his head rattled, but it's going to be at Evesham, it's going to be for prize wrestling, and it's potentially going to be a fatal four-way match. I've heard these rumors because management don't tell me a damn thing, but Dante does not care. He is going to maintain and retain that championship like he always does, and he's going to do it for the fans because the fans deserve the best, and Dante is the best.
Fantastic, mate. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. Remember, it's okay to talk. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you, guys. How was that for you, buddy?